I want to remind y'all of a quote from the course that I'm sure you're familiar with, and it's the one that really got my attention as I was first reading the course and made me think this is a book that I want to pay some attention to. And what it said was, Jesus was speaking for himself, and he said, "I will, if you want to be like me, I will teach you. If you don't, I will wait till you change your mind." And I thought, and I knew that is wonderful. And what I was expecting was, if you don't, I will send you to hell. That's just what came to my mind, or you will be punished in some way, if not hell, something similar, whatever. And I said, he would just wait. That also suggested to me that there was no limit on the waiting, because he didn't say, I will wait for 5 hours or 5 days or years. It simply says, I will wait. And it's implied that there's no limit to that. So if you don't do it in one lifetime, somehow or other you're going to get back here again, and he'll just wait through another one, you know. Just as long as you take, and you're going to have as long as you want. That was what I thought as well. And then he continued, and he said, how else can it be if God's kingdom is freedom? And he said, that actually is the only gift that I came to bring you, the gift of freedom. That's the only gift. So let's think a little bit about freedom. Jesus was trying to tell us all in this that he came to give us freedom. So what do you think of when you hear the word freedom? And is it the same? I wonder if it's the same thing that he was thinking of. We could think of lots of kinds of freedom. We could be free from oppression, from dictatorial government. We could be free from financial woes. Or what comes to your mind when you think of freedom? I know that money must be one aspect. You know, if I could just be free of take all my bills and kind of put them in the garbage, that would be nice. But at any rate, did you have something, Larry?
Well, that song is just freedom is another word for nothing left to lose.
Nothing left to lose. That's
just another word for nothing left.
Okay,
to lose.
I understand that. Yeah, Randy.
The way it's framed, as I wander around, it seems like freedom must be fought for. You know, it's such a prized possession that humans are willing to suffer and be a mess because of it, and yet what Jesus says is really not like that at all.
That's true. I mean, give me freedom or give me death. That's not what Jesus was thinking
Give me
about.
freedom or give me liberty. So,
yeah, give me liberty.
give me death, yeah, freedom or death.
We do have that idea that you've got to fight for your liberty. But I don't think Jesus had fighting in mind. He never talks about fighting.
Well, if we talk about freedom is, absence of oppression. Here even, that there's a gentleness that freedom flows out of, and yet we don't practice it so much.
Well, then if you keep reading, yes.
I was just going to say, it doesn't matter what your body is, you can always have freedom in your mind.
Yeah.
Okay, that gets to what I was going to say that Jesus talked about. Because if you could keep reading, he tells you what freedom he's talking about. And it is more like what you just said. Except he says he wants you to have freedom from, either from or for, it kind of depends on the way you frame it. Freedom to have your own will. He was wanting to, he says what has happened is you have imprisoned your will so that it cannot be useful to you. Now by will we think about that ability that we have to determine what we want. It is my will to, we don't use this phraseology much right now, but you could say it is, we don't say it is my will to go to the movie this afternoon. You just say let's go to the movie. But will represents what you want. That the knowledge of what you want. It is my will to go eat dinner, whatever. And he says, you have imprisoned your will. You have imprisoned your ability to know what you want. And I'm here to free that. So he is saying, you don't know what your will is. You don't know what that, you've lost that ability. Well, what has happened to it? You've tied it down by all kinds of things, saying, well, I can't go out to dinner because I can't pay my bills and I don't have the money. You know, and I can't even go over to my neighbor's house because I'm not sure I like my neighbor, you know, or whatever. There's something in your mind that is imprisoning your will to, and the only direction that the will needs to point in is the will for happiness, because that's God's will for us. Our will, needless to say, is meant to be aligned with God's will. And we quote that verse quite often here, that God's will for you or me is perfect happiness now. You say, well, that's pretty, would you say that's harsh? Well, I said, of course not. He wants my happiness. Yeah, I know, but I'm not ready for my real happiness. I just want a little bit. I want my version of happiness, which includes some real pain and grief in it, you know, as well. That's my happiness. And as you know, I spend some time occasionally watching a football game with a friend of mine who's a fan, and he just loves his team to win, and I'm not a fan. I don't care who wins, and he's well aware of this. I have no idea why he wants to watch a football game with me. I just beyond my mentality. He was saying, Bob, I'm so glad that we won our football game. I said, well, you know, I don't care. He says, yeah, I know you don't care. So, and he is so into it. Whoa, you know, like that. They made a touchdown or something. And I really don't judge him for doing that. It's just that's what he does. But I do observe that what we want to do is put our real will aside, replace it with a smaller will. The smaller will says, I am this team and I want to win. I am this team. That because he actually gets into it. You know, if you're rooting for something, I mean, he obviously cares so much. Oh, they didn't. Oh God, you know all this stuff. Have you never seen people root for games?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
They do that, and it's genuine. They're not putting on a show here. And so why do they feel that way? Because they've identified themselves. I think that's what's happening. They've identified themselves with this group. Now, they could identify with something else, and they wouldn't feel that way. But the identification is sort of unconscious. I mean, it just happens, you know. They don't consciously say, okay, starting in 5 minutes from now, I'm going to identify with this team, and then do it for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to turn that off and go eat dinner or whatever. It just happens automatically. And they probably hold on it throughout the whole week that I am that team. And it doesn't help to say, well, you could identify with something else, couldn't you? Mm-hmm. How about identifying with your cat and getting really excited every time it decides to come in the house? You know, whatever. It's arbitrary. It's totally arbitrary. It's no different than playing Monopoly and getting really, really excited because you bought Boardwalk or Park Place or something, you know. And, well, actually, we're capable of that, too.
Sure.
This is what we do here. Do we do anything else? Well, yeah, we have to work. Okay, you have to do that, see. I'm talking about what is it you want. So I'm saying you want to play little games. Okay, some people like to play big games and move whole countries and whole armies around by a few. But most of us are content with little games. Most of us don't really want to be the president or the general or the leader of the Navy. You know, that's too much. I don't feel that. But a little, you know, a game more my size, that's usually sufficient for us. But that's what we do here. That is, so I'm suggesting to you that that is your operational will is to play games. And a lot of people play games with relationships. I friend you on Facebook. And tomorrow, I unfriend you on Facebook. And then let's do it again. I don't do Facebook, so I may be using the wrong word, but I've heard stuff like that. I think that's roughly what they do. I friend you, I unfriend. It may even get into our language, you know, instead of just meeting somebody for the second time, say, I'm friending you now, you know, or I'm unfriending you. Yes.
What makes freedom so scary for us? Does the Course address that? We are afraid of freedom.
I don't know. Let's think about that a minute. I guess we must feel that's similar to being afraid of limitlessness. We want control. Okay, that's where that comes from. How many people really enjoy jumping out of an airplane with just a little hang glider thing on, you know, or, I mean, some do, some like the adrenaline. Our bodies are built to respond in a sort of unpleasant way to unexpected things. You know, you get a flash of fear or avoidance or something. Yeah.
We like the power we give to our attachments, the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that anytime I say you're identifying something, that's what's happening.
Exactly.
You've given your power to that thing so that it's like you go up to it and say, now, I'm letting you step in for me and be me, so that when you do good, I will feel good. And when you do bad, I will feel bad. It's so arbitrary. I'm just blown away sometimes when I get to thinking about it, how arbitrary it is. But then you come back to this matter of in doing that we limit our fear. I'm identifying with a little thing. I still have enough sense to know that just because they lose, no one's coming to burn my house down. You know, I mean, it's limited. I still get to eat food tomorrow. See, but if it were a bigger thing or a real war, you know, I wouldn't know that. You see, it's less limited. Well, we're talking about here freedom to join with God. That's the biggest thing we can think of, probably.
That's what I keep raising my hand about. It's like one of the things that that frightens me really is that I'll come across as some kind of God freak or Jesus freak, or I mean, I feel like I do identify with God, but then on the other hand, to be that example is kind of tough.
I didn't get the significance of the God freak or I know you're talking about people that preach on the street corner or something. I missed something.
When I identify that I am close to God and I start to express that, it doesn't always, I mean, just because I identify with God doesn't mean it's going to go the way I plan it to go.
Right,
I'm
you
still
don't
going to
have
have hiccups.
right. The way people react to it is unpredictable, and that's why one can keep it to yourself to a large extent. Except when we're here and we share miracle stories, we share what the Course says is that your ultimate happiness is being with God. That is your ultimate happiness. There's nothing greater than that. There's nothing that compares to that. It doesn't even begin to compare with that. And so the question is, why are we afraid of it? In fact, there's a whole section of the Course that says your greatest fear is fear of redemption. By redemption, it means getting everything that stands in the way of being with God, getting all those things out of the way so that you can go back to God. It says this is your actual greatest fear. I don't think we experience that directly or rarely, but so you just have to get a little feeling for it. It is saying that, and it probably is because we can't control it. Now we will try to control these, like if you're watching a football game, You got a knob here. You can turn the darn thing off. If it gets too disgusting, you just go click. You know, I'm not gonna watch you anymore. But then some things get bigger. Suppose you're interviewing for a job. You could have a fear about that. You can't. You can turn it off by refusing to go. But once you're in there, that guy is bigger than you in the sense of he controls whether or not he will hire you or not, and you have no control over that. So that unsettles us a little bit. And you know that from a spiritual standpoint, the only thing to do there is to it seems to me, or that's what I would do, I would want to be detached. So I'm okay if you go. If he doesn't hire me, I'm okay if he doesn't. That's the only mindset I want to have. You know, so and miracles encourage this. When you ask for a miracle, you don't attach to a particular outcome. This is crucial, of course, in understanding what a miracle is about. When I was a little kid, I thought a miracle meant getting God to do what I want him to do, and he never did it. So I threw that idea out, and of course nips that in the bud immediately. It says you don't tell God what the solution to your problem is. He tells you what the solution to the problem is, and it will be one that you will like better than the one that you wanted. And although it could take a little while for you to realize that, but this fear of redemption idea states that you, at some level, you know that if all the blocks were taken away, and you could perceive the light beyond, you would drop everything and rush to meet it. And this scares you, because for one thing, you're not sure you're ready to leave. You're not sure. Maybe you want to. There's still some games you haven't played. Well, God, I know it.
Got a bucket list.
Yeah, I got my bucket list. You know, I haven't done that one, or whatever's on that list. So Jesus is saying, I came here to deliver to you freedom of your will. You have tied it into all these games. It's not that games are wrong. They're delaying tactics in a way. Well, I want to give you $1 million. Well, wait a minute, I need to play with my quarters here. You know, I'm afraid of $1 million. You're saying it's too much. Well, it's not a monetary thing, but still, that is so. And the immensity of total fulfillment. No, I just want to be fulfilled a little bit for a little while. Just give me a little ice cream. Now, actually, food we don't have this. We can just dump ourselves into food and eat forever, you'd think, in our society. Although some of us eventually realize that doesn't work. I'll tell you just a little tiny story here. When I was my first awareness of this, I can remember being with my dad and my mother. She was sick, but I was probably about 9 years old, and we were in this big building, like a medical arts building, and Dad said, Bob, have you ever had a malted milk? I said, no, I never heard. Go over there at the soda fountain and order one. I went and ordered it. I came back and said, boy, that is good. Well, so then we went on a vacation to visit my parents in some roles in Indiana, and they lived on farms. And me and my cousin walked probably a mile to the little grocery store, a little place where there was a soda fountain. And of course, I got up there and ordered a malted milk. Well, my cousin ordered a banana split. And after I finished my malted milk, he said, "You want to buy this?" And I tasted that. Oh, hey, that's good too. I ordered a banana split, you know. What did I know, you know? Then we had to walk back that mile in that hot sun. I didn't make it. And I learned that you don't just shove everything that looks good or tastes good into your mouth all at once. It doesn't work out well.
You made it with a banana split, didn't you?
I left some stuff behind, yeah. Unpleasant experience. So we gradually learned to limit what we eat. We learned to put limits on ourselves. And in the physical world, that's needed. There are speed limits when you drive your car. That's needed, you know, that's useful. we have all these limits, fences. And then eternity says, you need to get rid of all your fences. This is an important question. It's what keeps God out of your life. It's your fences. And that very fear you're talking about. It's not that he doesn't want you, it's just that you're afraid to have him. Or her. God doesn't really have gender. And so, yes.
It's to free our will from so many other wills that we're tied to, and when we see that that the world will come at us, and we're so attached to that idea that the world will come at us, and that we are subject to the world. But to free our will, we're not subject to the world at all. It's sort of like, it reminds me of Plato's wall description. You know, the one guy gets away because he sees that the light is behind him, and he comes back to tell everybody who's so focused on the images on the wall, but they don't want to look away because they've already identified with that as being real and being part of themselves. That
They're afraid of anything else.
Yeah, they're afraid of look away.
It's like we want to hold on to our fences with every little strength we've got. Okay, I need this fence to fence in my idea of what's real for me or of what I am. And so we hold on to the fences, you see. And our greatest progress is made when we say, let the fences go. Yes.
Deep down, we know that it's going to happen, that the world's going to disappear. We know that we're holding on to that. David Hoffmeister just came out with a YouTube video saying, you know, the only function of the world is to delay the inevitability that this is going to end. So we're holding on.
And you had your...
Remember the rock opera Jesus Christ Superstar?
Yeah.
And Mary Magdalene had a song in there called I Don't Know How to Love Him. And she's talking about how don't know how to love God, you know, don't know how to love Jesus, whatever. And in the end, she says, well, if she could, she'd be lost, she'd be frightened. She would be limitless, but lost and frightened.
Well, I think that's our misconception of it. That might be something one experiences for a sec. That's what you experience now before you have that. It will not be what you experience when you do have it. But it's what you experience when you're anticipating what it might be like. Oh, that's going to be too much for me. But we all really know that's not true. Love is never too much. Love satisfies totally and brings complete peace and harmony. Yes.
In today's lesson, it talked about that there is no tomorrow as there is no past. There's only the now. And this extension of the now is all that is where happiness truly is the extending of today, of now.
Right. And if you're holding on to your fences, you probably miss the now. You're too busy putting another nail in the fence. But I'm wanting to get the idea across that fear is your enemy here, not your friend. The fences also are, in a sense, an enemy instead of a friend because they keep you bound in. And then you complain that God doesn't come into your yard. Well, you fenced him out. See? Because God's not limited. He can't come through the gate. He just comes in mass. It's sort of like from all directions and up and down all around, and while you're busy building your fence. You need to have an experience in which you let all the fences go. Somehow. It depends on you. You know, what works for you, you might say. And so when we watch the football game, the reason we get excited is we're sort of having an experience like that in a way, but we got it fenced in. We really know if the football team collapses, we're still in our house. You know, the house. And then we can pull back and say, well, I feel bad because the team lost, or I lost in that game. But not everything hadn't crumbled. And God is the one thing that cannot crumble. So that logically you would think, why would I have need to fear? But it's not a very logical process here. It is a matter, I need control because I fear not having control. You must have an experience where you don't have control, and please do it without shooting up. I mean, or whatever, because that doesn't seem to work very well. But I believe that's what goes on there. You know, if in fact, some societies build drug taking into their religious ceremony. The peyote was used by American Indians, so it's the same sort of thing. It's just not necessarily the one you want to do for various and sundry practical reasons. But you don't really need it. It's just your will. You don't really need a chemical drug to fizzle out the binders you've put on your will. Jesus again is saying, you've imprisoned your will. Please let it go. Cut the things and let it free. How often when you meditate, that would be a wonderful effort to do, is to imagine that you were in a hot air balloon and there were 5 different ropes holding you down. See, you can identify the ropes if you wanted to. I don't know. The big one might just be, I'm just afraid to go up. It's kind of high, or I might fall out. What if the balloon pops?
I'm at the mercy of the winds.
I'm at the mercy of the wind. Where are they going to take me? See, to experience the unlimited, you got to let go of your limits. At least within your own mind and being. You don't have to do it physically, because we're not talking about a physical experience. But this would be, it seems to me, a very valid thing to try to do in your meditation, or when you pray, or anything. There's no set form for it. There's no set form. So if you want a suggesting, you could imagine, I'm going to imagine I'm in, and fill in details. I'm sitting here, and there's a beam of white light that just comes right straight through the ceiling, and boom, it's on to me. I'm encased in the thing. Now, but it's not, I'm okay because it's not in my body. It's out there. So, now let's bring it into the body. And let the this shimmering white light, let it enter this cell, that cell, every cell in your body. Let it go in there. Be in it and around it. Every cell. Every cell. All in your mind, your toes, everything. And you're completely helpless because you're not exerting your will. And completely safe because it's God's will that is acting instead. And all is well. And then you float. You see, in peace and total acceptance. And you say, I and God are one, whereas there's no separation. If there's one cell that you have held aside, the one in my elbow, whatever, the one on top of my head, one cell that you hold onto as yours, no, I don't want light in this one. I want to control this one. Then probably the whole light just goes away. I really sort of believe you need to get all the fences aside because God is limitless, and He's not going to contort Himself to come through the openings in your fence. Now, I'm not saying spiritual help from other sources might do that, sure, but the Creator Himself is just not going to do that. He is not going to be limited for your convenience because He's trying to teach you unlimitedness. And that's His nature, and that's actually our nature, but we just need our will to be freed. And again, in this little quote, Jesus is saying that's the only lesson I came to teach you, is freedom from your imprisoned, freedom of your will, which is imprisoned. And of course, any attachment to, somebody mentioned attachment, I don't remember who now, Bruno, maybe you mentioned that. Any attachment to the world is just an example of that. You need to cut them. So you do this in practical ways as feels peaceful. I remember when one of the big moves, in fact it's probably in a way the biggest move in my whole life, was to get divorced. Not because I had a bad situation or anything like that, it was just time. my wife and I had drifted apart, and we were not going together. There's no point in trying to walk down the same lane if both people don't want to. And I thought, well, I could do that, but what would it do to my family? What would it do to her? I had nothing against her, nor she I. It's just we're going different ways. And I usually tell everybody, I wish she'd been a mean person because then I'd have a good excuse, but she didn't happen to be a mean person. She was just fine. She's a very nice lady. But, and so I couldn't do that. And I didn't have, in a sense, I didn't have the money for it, because if I had enough money, I could make sure that I could support her being trained in school so she could work and get some other employment. I just didn't have enough money saved for that kind of thing. And you know what happened? I thought about trying to do that, then I put it aside. No, I don't want to take her education away from her. She was going to graduate school, and I wouldn't have been able to pay for that if we were separated. I'd have to be paying alimony or something instead, you know. There wasn't enough money to stretch that far. And I said, I don't want to do that. And within a week, I think it was shortly thereafter, I got a phone call. And Dad said, Bob, your uncle died. None of us knew he had any money, but he did. Now, it was supposed to be left to all the relatives, including his wife's relatives, and she had a whole bunch of them. But my Uncle Marvin didn't like them. So she died first, and he just wrote them out of the will. So he gave it all to our side, and there were just 7 of us. So we got 1/7 of $200,000 or something like that. Well, that's not a whole lot of money, but it's enough. It was enough. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Money went further then than it does now. And that was the very first question that my wife asked. I remember this really clearly, laying in bed with her one night. I said, Sydney, we just need to separate. And she said, Bob, we can't afford it. And I said, yes, we can. I got a call from Dad. I've got X amount of money here. I've looked at it carefully. We can afford it. And so we did. And I could have never done that without the course, because it actually says that only your own thoughts can hurt you. But it helps with miracles. That was a miracle. That was a big, I know miracles are supposed to all be the same size, but from where we stand, they all look different. You know, and that to me looked like the biggest one ever, because my situation changed then, you see. And it was really interesting that everybody kept asking, well, when is Sydney going to get mad at you? Because we'd separated. She's supposed to get mad. And I said, well, I don't know. And basically, I think she began to get a little bit mad when it finally hurt. It's hard to have to go into the workforce when you haven't been in it much before to support yourself. That's a challenging thing. And so she got a little bit that way. But then she met another man and married him, and their relationship probably was better than ours, if you can make such comparisons. And she later told me, she said, Bob, I'm so grateful that you had the courage to leave. I was too afraid. It wasn't that I'm all that courageous. I had the Course of Miracles, see, and she didn't. So you can step out into new places, and that was a fence. That you say, why do you want to leave? That was a fence. Being in a family is a fence. A family is a whole bunch of fences, actually. You know, if you let it. I'm not saying it has to be, but it lends it to that to that viewpoint pretty easy. So your family and any other fences, you just need to leave at God's doorstep and say, I want these fences brought down, but I want your help doing it. And we call that help miracles. And it was only today that I finally realized, that call from Dad and what my uncle did, that was a miracle. I couldn't have done that otherwise. I just couldn't have. But with a miracle, you can step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.